everybody who's worked at Saturday Night Live, pretty much everybody does a Lorne Michaels impression. We've all worked for him. Obviously a great man, a huge influence on all of us. But you do, for my money, one of the very best Lorne Michaels impressions, and you do one specific, just like looking at the oyster crackers, as looking for oyster crackers as brilliant. You do one of Lorne when you took a flight with Lorne. Is that right?
Yeah. I flew with Lorne to from New York to LA after a show. So we did the SNL and we were like, good night. And then it was like we had to rush to get on his plane to LA for the Emmys. And I was on the plane with Seth Meyers and Fred Armisen, and I go, I've never been on Lorne's plane before. This is really exciting. And they're like, yeah. You know, you should sit in the back with him. And I was like, really? Oh, wow. You know, and so I sat down with Lorne, and he talks, like, he tells you everything about Saturday Night Live, and it's the coolest thing, but I was so exhausted, and he talked the entire time, and he'd be like, and that man was Chevy Chase. And then you wake up, and he'd be like, and Dick Ebersol said, you know, it's really your show. You wake up, and it's like, and Ray Charles said they all owe me money. You wake up and he's like, and that's how you grow blueberries in Maine. Like, the sun is coming up, and I'm looking back, and there's Fred and Seth sleeping all peacefully, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is gonna be a quiz, you know? Like, now when did Chevy leave, Bill? Yeah.
How do you grow blueberries?
How do you grow the blueberries? Do you mash them with your feet? That's wine!
He can eject you from the plane at any
I'm like,
time.
yeah.
Seth Rogen's coming on the show tomorrow. I know you've worked with Seth a lot. They did it, but they're masked. You couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Do you have any impressions of Seth? You must have worked with him a bunch over. I know you have in many films. And
Seth. I remember when we did Superbad. I was like, oh, I like to wear glasses because I used to get. We played cops in that movie, and I was always. We get. What do you call it? Not arrested, but messed with by when I was growing up by this cop, and he wore glasses. And when a cop wears glasses, you're just kind of like, okay. I don't know. There's something about a cop in glasses, and I was like, oh, I'd like to wear glasses. And then it becomes a thing where they bring out the glasses and they're showing me this, whatever. And I tried on so many glasses, and then I go, what should I wear? And they go, well, Seth, what do you think? And he's like, I really don't give a shit. He can literally wear like whatever the he wants. I mean, I don't really care. It makes zero difference to me. It's like, I mean, no one cares. So yeah.
Now, a lot of movies with Seth were Judd Apatow films.
Yeah.
And so you just trying to coax a little Judd Apatow out of you. I mean, people know his movies, and Judd gets out there and he does stand-up and stuff, so people are getting to learn his rhythm.
Yeah, Judd was always like, I was in Trainwreck and with him, and he would direct. Judd's thing is you say something to him and he goes, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. That's very funny. He sounds like he's had a cold since he was 2 years old. And he's always like, oh, that's funny. That's funny. I like that. That's good. Yeah, that's good. And then he'll say, like, you know, his answer to everything, he's like, you know what the interesting thing is? You just want to see how up you are. You know? And Amy Schumer were like, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like how just totally, you know, you know.
Little air coming out of his mouth.
A little air coming out. Yeah, his death rattle will be like, you know. Lost it. The death was exactly a.
You do an impression that no one does, and he's been with us for so long, and he's such an icon, but no one does him because he's very specific. Alan Alda.
Oh yeah, I did Alan Alda. I did more impressions here than my SNL audition.
Yeah.
What is happening?
So far, you're doing pretty well. By the way, when we go to dinner, this is what it's like. You know, I'm just like, more. Give it to me, please. I want more.
talking about serial killers.
You know, the thing about John Wayne Gacy. The thing about John Wayne Gacy, always said thank you.
No, I did Alan Alda. I did auditioning. Colin Jost wrote a sketch where I was Alan Alda auditioning for Biff in Back to the Future. And I was like, hey, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? I gotta tell you, this is just great. I love this. This is a great movie.
Such a great impression. No one does that, by the way.
Peter Serafinowicz does a pretty good one, but but I met him once, and he was like, "Hey, you could do my ADR," and I was like, "No."
Now, you did something for us once, and it was so great. You don't have to do it. I just loved it. It was one of my favorite things you did, which was an impression of a dying tauntaun. And again, it's not required.
I did it. You had me do it. You've had me do that more than once.
Who
you
can
like
count?
It so
I'd let you know once,
people
twice.
Do people know what tauntauns were in Star Wars?
Yeah.
George Lucas is at home like.
More for me! Ah, they know it, all of them there. You see that? They all knew it. They didn't know Burt Lancaster. They didn't know the son of the server. They knew that, didn't they?
Honey, take the cigar out of your mouth. Sorry, but a tauntaun kind of goes like this, and then it goes. Packer. And then it dies, it goes. Barry is on HBO.